This is proof in action of how struggles, incarceration, whistleblowing brings people through friendship together to try to do something. Will we succeed? Who knows? Who cares? What matters is the actual process of trying to do it, exactly as Slavoj said. Allow me to just give you one very brief example, a very practical example of what Slavoj was saying, that Julian is actually doing it, and he's doing it from within the Ecuadorian embassy. What's this it? Look, last year, the press was reporting, this is speaking personally, that there was a tussle between my negotiating team on behalf of Greece and the Troika. The Troika wanted reforms, they wanted a fiscal consolidation program for Greece that would settle the Greek crisis, and I was portrayed as somebody who was saying no to reforms, was being recalcitrant, was being difficult, and so on and so on. That was the official story. I was, at the time, trying to convince the world that, the reality was exactly the opposite, that I was going with my team to the lenders with very moderate, very decent proposals, and they were fighting against one another like cats and dogs and having no proposal, and the only thing they agreed upon was to strangle our fledgling democracy and government. Now, it was impossible to convince the vast majority of people who listened to the systemic media. And Julian did it in one afternoon. One afternoon, a few months ago, he published through WikiLeaks a conversation between Paul Thompson, the IMF's, the International Monetary Fund's European chief, and one of his minions, Delia Valculescu, who is the IMF's person in Greece. Just read the conversation between them. That's it. Case closed. If you read the conversation between them, it's all about how the greatest impediment to an agreement that makes sense for Greece is Berlin. And they were planning and plotting how they are going to push Angela Merkel into a kind of sensible solution, which wasn't very sensible, but it's the one that the IMF wanted. And it is clear from that conversation that the Greek government is simply not an agent ever since we surrendered. They're simply waiting for the big boys and girls to decide amongst themselves what they want to do. So this is just a simple example. Years of obfuscation of lies through the systemic media was pierced like a balloon that popped by something that Julian did from that one simple, small, tiny, airless, windowless room.
Thank you. Stretchko Horvath, same question. What's your precise thing to do?
Okay, let me turn, since I think soon, don't worry, we will open the floor for questions and for some democracy. Let me come back to what Yanis said before, and then I will give a kind of, although I'm not good at recipes, and when we had the launch of DM at Volksbühne in Berlin, Brian Eno said something interesting. He said, start cooking and the recipe will follow. And I think this is the point, what Occupy Wall Street was doing, what all the movements are doing. When you occupy a square, even if you don't have a precise idea what you will do the day after, you're already creating the change you want to see. That's something what Slavoj said as well. Turning back to what Yanis said before, mentioning Daniel Ellsberg, and mentioning how internet was created. People tend to forget that the internet was created by massive state sponsorship. Without state investments, mainly in US, MIT mainly, there wouldn't be the internet. And then what happened? Something very interesting happened at Silicon Valley. Some guys gathered and they started to do something in the garage. But the same as I'm opposed to superheroes, I'm opposed to the notion of a genius as well. If it comes to them, of course. Because what they were been doing, let's take the case of Steve Jobs, for instance. When Steve Jobs died, he was selling
dead.
Motion spotter up, please.
I'm replacing battery. Enemy medic spotted. Hostile light assault trooper spotted. Grenade out! Enemy back.
Hostile light assault trooper spotted.
Target down.
Push in.
Cover me, reloading. Eyes open. Eyes open, enemy heavy. Reloading.
I'm getting fixed up.
Enemy.
Celebrated Italian ingenious of the 21st century because he invented the iPhone, he invented the MacBook and so on. But what he actually did was that he was building the iPhone and the MacBook on the shoulders of the others who were building it. It brings us back to what Karl Marx said in The Fragments on the Machine in his Grundrisse when he was speaking about the general intellect. The general intellect as an accumulation of knowledge of all of us, of generations, of centuries, yeah, Nikola Tesla comes from ex-Yugoslavia. There is still a fight whether he comes. Yeah, now we will see with the applause. Does he come from Croatia or from Serbia? There's a big fight still going on. So, is he from Croatia? Okay, no applause. So it means he's from Serbia. It's just solved a century-long problem. It's not important, of course. Tesla wouldn't be Tesla without the general intellect, without the accumulation of knowledge. And it's interesting that Steve Jobs even said in the 70s or 80s in an interview, sorry, that he couldn't create what he did without the knowledge of the others. But what they are trying to sell us today, precisely Silicon Valley ideology, is that they are geniuses and that they created the knowledge. But look at Google.
Fuck off.
Is there a genius behind Google? No. Everything what Google did, and that's something what I learned from Julian. Don't forget that Julian is a great philosopher of technology today. What Google is doing is acquisition, acquisition, acquisition. Did Google invent Google Maps? No, it bought it. Did Google invent all other applications? No, it bought it. And here you can precisely see what the privatization of general intellect means. It means monopoly capitalism. You buy a small firm, you buy a bigger firm, you buy a smaller firm, and then you do data integration. Which means that the politicians today, being the national governments and so on, which is also one of the reasons why Syriza, for instance, failed, because the power doesn't reside in the national government anymore. And this is the reason, one of the reasons why we formed DM. Because we believe that only by radical internationalism, which at the same time doesn't only mean combining different nationalities, different kind of organization models, but it means combining and bringing together people such as Julian Assange, such as Brian Eno, who's a musician, such as Patti Smith, who is a musician, such as Zizek, economists, but also direct horizontal democratic movements such as Nuit Debout, Blockupy, that only by building a radical internationalism, a platform which would include different organizational models on the vertical and horizontal level, that we can oppose these powers. So this is in a way my answer to your question, but to finish, I believe in the politics of friendship.
Placing battery.
Without the politics of friendship, there can be no radical movement. I'm sorry, it's just a very short letter from a friend from India, Arundhati Roy. So she couldn't film a video as others did, and I must tell you that on the freeassange.org, freeassangenow.org webpage, you can find videos by Noam Chomsky, Michael Moore, Jean-Michel Jarre, and others, but we don't have time today. And Arundhati Roy sends us the following letter, and I would like to finish and then open the floor for the audience with this letter.
Shield generator.
In a war-torn valley, a little north of Delhi, from where I'm sending you this message, a few weeks ago something interesting happened. The army had surrounded a village in which a group of militants was holed up. The army ordered the villagers to come out of their homes so that they could open fire on the house the militants were in. The villagers came out with their hoes and plugs and axes and shovels, surrounded the house, brought the militants out, put them in their midst and escorted them out of the village to the edge of forest and to freedom. I wish we could do this for Julian Assange. He is our militant in the war against imperialism and neoliberalism. Unfortunately, he is imprisoned in a little house right across the road from Harrods, London, where he has been for 4 years now. There's no forest near Harrods, so we can't do what those villagers did. Not literally, but we can in spirit and in metaphor, and we must. Free Julian Assange now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Streshko Horvat. It is time, of course, where there's been a lot of things going on, so it's time for you to ask questions if you have. And I suppose that there will be some kind of microphone walking.
Shield generator
You have
critical.
to raise your hand and
Didn't do it, I had to.
well, we can.
Hello. Sorry. So my question is
You
for...
have a male voice,
Yes.
where are you?
Here I am. So my question is for Professor Varoufakis and also for the other speakers, and it pertains to his erratic Marxism and also its relationship to the goals of DM. And I wonder if his erratic Marxism and DM as well have plans or hold the goal of changing the relations of production, and if so, how?
Thank you. There, we were, yeah. Back there, there.
Spotted a hostile engineer.
Hello, Mr. Varoufakis. The question is for you. When you talk about Europe, you talk about TTIP and you don't take care of the TPP. When we have signed United States have signed a treatment with the Pacific, we are seen as the best allies of the United States are going to Asia, and you are talking about Europe. Are you taking any care of China? Are you taking any care of them? How is going to the geopolitical situation of Europe is going to lead with that if you post to that kind of treatment? Thanks for your time.
I'm glad you pointed out the gender imbalance, because we do have 3 men on the panel. There is in Europe called EU Panel Watch, so I'll be tweeting them tomorrow to make sure you're pulled up on it. But my question was about the last point on your manifesto.
One more. France.
Yeah. So I tried to add something to the gender balance. I'm happy to see you back. I was in Berlin. I have a question which has been coming up several times. Indeed, we have to construct an international movement or movements that can develop force to resist and to eventually overturn somehow the powers that be. But as we all know, real democracy is only possible when it is also rooted locally.
Victory
if we not want
is
to
at
just
hand.
reinforce the mechanism of globalism by our own resistance movement, how do we make cooperate the local and the global?
Here in front, there's one. Are you already to the microphone? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to ask a question that relates to technology and that also relates to the work that Bernard Stiegler is conducting. Bernard Stiegler being the organizer of a similar event currently in Paris. At one of Stiegler's seminar, someone has established the historical link between technology and youth, young people. And he has also pointed out the fact that progressive political parties have no vision whatsoever towards technology. And in having no vision whatsoever towards technology, they basically abandon and give up use. What do you think about that?
Thank you. Here. We're going to take 2 more, and then I think we have to wrap it up, or otherwise we'll lose track.
Actually, I just got a message that...
Hello.
Please, go ahead.
Hello, good evening. I would like to ask something to Yanis Varoufakis. And I think we all share your concerns about the lack of deep democracy and this opacity in Europe. And we appreciate these progressive efforts to propose other alternatives. But what another concern is, we have to acknowledge that the European Union is one of the most successful political projects in the world. We have a lot to thank to it, a lot of prosperity and peace. And we have to also protect this project. We have to criticize this, pose good alternatives, but also to care that we don't let it fall down. So, as I know you are a strong pro-European person, I would like to ask you about the specific changes you would like to see in the European Union, and also ask you, do you stand for a federal Europe? Would you like to see a more united, politically speaking, union? Thank you.
had the impression,
I
yeah,
have
someone
a
was
short,
holding the yes.
short last question. I'll keep it short. Just to add something to the question of the other guy relating youth and technology. You were talking about technology being part of the problem and the solution, hacking as being part of the solution as well. So how do you see this role evolving in the future? So technology being part of the solution.
Thank you very much. We're going to take that already, and then we'll see where it leads us to. Please, Varoufakis.
Wonderful questions. Firstly, we certainly need a common agenda. This is what DIEM is trying to do. We are trying to create an infrastructure for movements. We're not antagonistic with any existing movement or indeed with any existing political party. What we want to do in Europe is bring people together in a coalition that we should have had in 1930 against the slide into an abyss which resulted in magnificent human costs. And it is essential to be internationalist. You're quite right. Those of you who talked about the need to build bridges with, for instance, those magnificent hundreds of thousands of people who got involved in Bernie Sanders' campaign and who are creating on the other side of the Atlantic exactly that which we're trying to create here. And we have this ambition to build that bridge. On the TPP and the TTIP, it is true that we mentioned TTIP because our manifesto focuses on Europe. But exactly what we say about the TTIP applies to the TPP. They're the same project, the project that was born after the collapse of the World Trade Organization round, of the United States attempt to create, if you want, a monopoly of knowledge for American multinational corporations. And at the same time, and this is extremely dangerous in the Pacific Basin, to encircle China and to separate it from its natural markets, making sure that it is American multinationals that write the rules and the industry standards. So you are knocking on an open door, those of you who are asking of us to think internationally and to include the TPP in our agenda against TTIP. One of you said that it is
Generator
comrade from the
stabilized.
DiEM25 here in Brussels, that we must stop preaching to the converted. Well, this is the great test for all of us. At the moment, there are people out there watching football, watching reality shows, who don't give a damn about what we're doing here, who don't have any interest in politics, but who go to bed every night, guys in Europe. We're going to be delivering them in the arms of the AfD in Germany, of Golden Dawn, of Le Pen, and so on and so forth. So this is what we need to do. How are we going to do it? Well, how about stop the practice of the left of the past, which is navel-gazing and being completely consumed by internal fights that remind me personally of Monty Python's Life of Brian, with the Judean People's Front fighting against the Liberation Front of Judea. And putting out an agenda, very simple language, explaining to people how investment can grow, how can be investment in the things that humanity needs, like green energy, and disinvestment in the things we don't need, like Volkswagen diesels and toxic derivatives, and how this can be made to work using existing institutions, developing them in a manner that will inspire them to think that, you know, Tina is dead, long live Tatiana. That is, there is no alternative, it's finished, and Tatiana is replacing Tina. Where Tatiana stands, this is my acronym form, that astonishingly there is an alternative. Of the gender imbalance, we're guilty as charged. Nothing more to say. On the local and the global, let me give you a very small example of how we tackle this difference between local and global. In DiEM, one of the things that we did from day one was to include not only movements like Blockupy, like Nuidapu, but also the rebel cities that are emerging throughout Europe.
Generator
Our great friend and one of the DiEM25 initial signatories, Ada Colau, the mayor of Barcelona, that magnificent woman, is showing us the way. Ada Colau became the mayor of Barcelona by starting a movement to protect people in Barcelona from foreclosures, evictions, in the hands of the bankrupt banks that were being bailed out by the very same people who were being evicted by the very same bankers that they were helping. And very soon, that movement for defending those people became so strong that the great city of Barcelona was won. And yet, Ada Colau and Gerardo Pissarello, who is deputy mayor, and Jordi Ayala, our comrades in Barcelona, understand that to have a city of Barcelona agenda that actually makes a lasting difference and which can flourish, it needs to have an overarching European agenda in which that rebel city is embedded. And now there is such a network, including La Coruña, Madrid, Valencia. Very recently, Napoli has entered, and we are now, what we are doing as DM is providing them with a European agenda that will provide them with the overarching narrative in which they can flourish as cities that look after their citizens. This is our way of combining local and global action. Technology. Actually, somebody asked me to speak as an erratic Marxist. By the way, the reason why I can call myself an erratic Marxist is because I believe that the only way of being genuinely Marxist is to be erratic. Any attempt to be dogmatic leads to the gulag.
And at the same time, it might sound as erotic.
This is the author of The Radicality of Love speaking. His latest book.
On sale outside.
Which is on sale, yes. I was asked to comment on about changing the relationship of action. Look, the left has failed spectacularly to create a revolution that changes through political means the relationship of action, to move away from capitalist relations to socialistic shared practices for producing and distributing.
Wait.
We must learn our lessons from that spectacular failure of the last century. But fear not, because capitalism is doing a magnificent job at undermining itself by creating technologies that it cannot survive. All these wonderful recent technological innovations and revolutions are making corporations absolutely irrelevant. Very soon, when economies of scale have been destroyed by the combination of the internet and 3D printing, there will be no need to have Volkswagen. There will be no need to have any of the corporations that have become part and parcel of corporate capitalism. We will have the capacity with these technologies very soon, sooner than we think, to produce immense wealth, to replace a lot of the chores, actually all of the chores, all the repetitive work, including intellectually repetitive work, that most doctors and most lawyers actually do these days, with machines, once machines pass the Turing test. Then we are going, as a species, we're going to have a choice. We have a choice between two science fiction movies. One is Star Trek, which is the ideal communism. They are all a hole in the wall that produces anything they want, and they have philosophical discussions and explore the universe. That's communism. But there's another possible extreme, the Matrix, where all human beings are attached to a system of machines that suck the life out of us, create illusions in our heads of a world that doesn't exist, and where we are the ultimate dystopia, victims and slaves of the machines that we have created in a Dr. Frankenstein kind of way. The choice is ours. It will be political. And the only way we're going to shift towards Star Trek rather than the Matrix is through the energizing of democratic politics and transparency and facing the truth and taking the red, not the blue.
Our foes will know the will of Angle.
Further on the question of technology, I remember we were having, I think we were together in the Ecuadorian embassy, and we were having a
NC Reaver ID.
We can't let this facility fall to the enemy.
Hostile max identified.
Get on the point.
Facility is lost. For the moment.
Shield generator critical.
I am grateful to you.
Enemy engineer in the area. Spotted a hostile infiltrator. Visual on a hostile engineer.
Shield generator critical. Generator destroyed. SCU compromised.
Stay alert! Enemy heavy nearby! Enemy medic in the area! Cover me! Reloading!
Victory has not eluded us. Fight harder.
I've got ammo for you here.
SCU critical.
What? The fuck?
Vano is with you. Do not falter.
SCU stabilized. SCU critical. SCU stabilized.
We've got a hostile Mac in the area. Hostile Max. Just saw it. Enemy medic. Cover me. Reloading. Enemy engineer spotted. Enemy engineer. Fire! I'm on your side.
Our foes will know the will of Vanu. The facility is secure. Excellent work. others will know the will of Vanu.
SCU compromised. Generator destroyed. SCU critical. SCU stabilized.
The facility is secure. Excellent work.